Today, we are becoming obsessed with branding and building a brand that really is an extension of who you are instead of just what you think you should be saying or how you think you should be showing up online. So much anymore, we want to buy from people we actually relate to. And today's guest knows a lot about that. Today's guest is someone who is redefining what it means to build a brand. Let me introduce you to Emily Jane Sarroff. Emily is a brand artist, business alignment coach, and the host of Empower with M podcast, which, if you haven't, you need to go listen. I was just listening to it on a walk. She has a background in architectural design and certifications as a life coach and business mentor. And she really blends the art of branding with the science of marketing and psychology. She believes your brand isn't just the vibe, the aesthetics, or the logo. It's an extension of who you are. And when it's done right, it helps you deeply connect with your audience and communicate with clarity, confidence, and that goes a long way. She's built a six-figure business by helping entrepreneurs and coaches tap into their highest selves and bring their visions to life in a way that actually feels aligned. And I have to say, I have absolutely loved following you on Instagram since we connected because your content is actually fun to watch. So welcome to Becoming Obsessed.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I love receiving that feedback that you're enjoying my content because that is a big piece of what it is that I do and what it is that I teach. And I try to lead through embodiment, and that means creating content that's truly authentic, not just using the word authentic as a buzzword, but using the word authentic as a true embodiment of who I am online is the same as who I am offline, and that I'm just building a brand that's deeply centered around me.
And I love that I can see in your video background right now the big spray paint banner that you have on your Instagram. That was so much fun. I love that that's
Yeah,
there.
it's so funny because the last couple of podcasts I've done since that video, everyone's commented on that. And I almost didn't hang it up on the wall because I'm like, oh, does it look messy? It's not hanging properly. Does it look tacky? But everyone I've done a podcast with, they're like, oh my gosh, that's the thing that you spray painted. And they love it. And I think, again, that says a lot about, I guess, what we're going to talk about today when it comes to branding and really creating something that becomes recognizable to others because it's so uniquely you and it's not just, a copy of what anyone else has done.
Yeah, this piece, this visual piece that's bringing your brands together and it's really connecting them.
Mm.
So, something that I think is really unique about you, and I haven't told you this, and so I'm really curious to just hear more about this.
Yeah.
I have worked with so many artists and creatives, and often when you're in a creative industry or you're working in a creative capacity, you're either an artist or you're more business savvy. And the
Mm.
amount of people that I've worked with, especially in the wedding industry, who were like great as a photographer, florist, live illustration, and then they're like, I don't know how to run a business. And I love that you call yourself a brand artist and that you have this really visual, creative, artistic side, but you also are brand and business savvy. And you
Yeah.
kind of marry these two together. And I'm really curious to just learn more of how you kind of found that you have both of these sides, and
Mm.
then also how it's kind of shaped your business and how you help other businesses.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really great point or observation that you've made there. It's not something that I talk about too much either because it tends to go one of two ways. Like either you're extra creative and creatives, they don't really like structure. They like to go with the flow and not really have many systems or processes in place. They don't really think in that way. And then you have the opposite end, which is really logical, really structured. And then they struggle to tap into that creative side, but I've always been able to tap into both myself. I did a test one time, actually. I forgot what the test was called, but it essentially tells you whether you're highly visionary or highly integrator. And this also speaks into both of those different minds. And mine, funny enough, was very, very high in both. So I don't know how common that is, but the way that I think tends to be fluid between both sides. But in saying that as well, there's a lot of, I guess, we could talk about feminine and masculine energy in this, right? Like where it's the feminine is the flowy, the creative, the masculine is the systems, the structure, and learning to shift between both of these. It doesn't matter whether you're highly visionary or higher on the integrator. Like you can just learn to understand the two different energies that naturally everyone embodies. You can start to make that shift yourself. So for me, I've always defaulted to even though the creative side has always come very naturally, I've always pushed myself to learn the structure side, the masculine side. And I guess this comes from a place of like wounding, where when I was younger, I was like, oh, we got to go like follow this path. This is what success looks like. Have to create it in this way. And then I would learn to adapt to that, and I would learn to like, fit into that. And it's only really now more so that I'm embracing that creator side a lot more heavily. So I guess having established that foundation, learning to step into that masculine, learning to hold that structure has really helped. But when this comes into play with my clients, like where I see this is most helpful is creating a balance for them. So if my clients are more on the creative side, then I can bring them more of that, system structure, masculine side. But if they're more on the system structure, masculine side, then I can balance them out by offering them that creative side. So it's really helpful in that coaching setting where I'm able to be flexible and adapt and provide to my clients that contrast that they're missing.
I love that. And it is such a superpower. I love how you talk about this with coaching of really leaning into, okay, what is this person's strengths and
Mm-hmm.
where are the holes that I can help them see or help fill in instead
Yeah.
of, I know I was listening to one of your episodes where you were talking about your mentors and coaches that you've had and how some of them are a great energetic match. And this is something I've experienced too, where some of them aren't always, the energetic match, or
Yeah.
they are maybe a little bit more one size fits all when a lot of times business is 80% and then
Mm,
20% you really need that personal touch.
very much.
I love the term brand artist because I think it shows how you really are going inward to be like, okay, how do I actually present in the world? Maybe there's
Mm,
not a term or not a popular term, but what is it that I do? And you
yeah.
haven't just found something that is clever, right? But in marketing terms, it's like clear over being clever. And
Yeah.
it paints a picture of what you do. And I'm really interested on your journey as a brand artist or as this coach and mentor. What were some of those pivotal moments that helped you to really find your place?
Yeah, well, I guess the best way to speak into this would just be to walk you through like the last 4 years of business, I guess, starting from the very beginning. So essentially, like, when I was in high school, I was always told go to university, pick a degree, climb the corporate ladder. Like, that's what success looks like. And I have this clear memory of when I was in year 12, which is like, I don't know what that would be called in the US, but that's like, the last grade in school before you graduate and you go to college. And I remember going to our university's open day, and I'm walking around and, I'm looking at the architecture building, the engineering building, like all of those ones that I was told I need to go take a look at. But then I found myself walking past the arts building, and I walked inside, and it was like this big, like open studio space. There were canvases, there were paints, there were projects that people were working on. And I remember in that moment feeling something inside me like was really awakening. But then I shut it down. I shut it
Mm.
down and I said to myself, no, you cannot go to university to be an artist. That's not going to pay well. You can't make a real career out of that. Go back to the architecture center and learn more about that. And so I did. And then I went on to go and study my architecture degree. And I finished my bachelor's, started my master's. So this was like 4.5 years of studying that I did. When I then reached a point where I had only 6 months left to go, and I felt this intense inner turmoil building, where my head was being like, okay, finish the next 6 months, get your master's degree, get the piece of paper, then figure out something from there. But my heart was pulling me in a different direction. My heart was pulling me towards my podcast, the Empower With Them podcast, which was a passion project at that point. And it was saying, build a business around this. And so in that moment, I had to make the decision, do I stay in this degree or do I go and follow this path of something else, of the unknown, and see where this takes me. And in that moment, I made that decision to quit my degree, quit my job, and just go all in on starting a business. At that time, after making that decision, I started to lean back into my art. But soon after, I stepped away again because now I was focused on hitting my first six figures, needing to hustle, needing to build success through my business, and sacrificing that part of me, that creative side of me, in order to pursue this monetary goal that I wanted to reach. Now, I was very much working from a place of needing to prove myself and prove that that path was going to work for me, which was why I threw my art away. And after making my first six figures in just 8 months at the age of 22, I burnt myself out. And it was in burning myself out that I then started to lean back into art. And so I think you can start to see the pattern that's coming up here. So after I leant back in, I then leant back out again, right? I got into a relationship that was a domestic violence one, and that burnt me out even further. Again, the first thing that went was my art. I stopped creating, I stopped drawing, I stopped painting. I was focusing on surviving. I was focusing on keeping my business afloat. And it was once I left that relationship, I finally started creating again. And it was 12 months ago 12 months ago where I really started to identify what was playing out here. I really started to see what pattern was happening. But yet, I still didn't give myself the full permission to express what was coming through, to lean into that creative side, because the version of success that I've grown up seeing and that I see all around me, it doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like being an artist. It doesn't look like expressing that creative part of yourself. No, it looks like hustling. It looks like building a certain way. And so I would keep denying myself leaning into what was calling me forward because I had no evidence that that path would be safe. And it was only a couple of months ago. So I had my 27th birthday. It was the 4th of March this year that I turned 27. And I remember when my birthday hit, there was this intense flood of emotions that came through that I could not shake. Like it was like the universe was screaming at me to listen to what was coming up within. And so I tuned in. I tuned into what emotion was coming through to me. And it was just this strong knowing that I need to create art. I need to express that part of myself. And it was as though the emotion that came through was the kind of emotion that it's like, okay, you've ignored me for so long. Now I'm giving you no other choice but to actually go and do the thing. Because until you do the thing that you've been avoiding doing, this feeling isn't going to go away. And so that day I went down to the art store. I bought some canvases. I bought some paints. I bought some brushes. I, fucked business off for that day or for the next couple days actually. And I was like, we are just creating. We are just going to be in the garden. We are just going to paint. We are just going to move whatever emotion is coming through. And it was in that moment where I realized exactly what was at play. I realized that for my entire life, I've been denying myself from fully expressing myself as an artist. I'd been denying myself from exploring how I could create success around that. And so I gave myself permission to ask, what if? What if I could blend what I'm creating in business with who I want to be as an artist? What if it didn't mean that I had to just throw away everything I've worked for, but I could actually integrate the two? That I could use this foundation that I've built in my business as the enabler for me to now begin to step deeper into my artistry and express that more. And I said to myself, what if I didn't have to wait until I reach quote unquote success before I started painting again? And that was when I enabled myself to actually begin to integrate that into my brand. And it was through allowing that potential to just be open and received that the idea of being the brand artist came through. It's the integration of both sides of me. It's the integration of that businesswoman who wants to make an impact and wants to live on her own terms and wants to create wealth in a way that is different to the norm. And it's the integration of that artist that just wants to express herself and to create and to use her creative mind to impact not only my life, but other people's lives as well. And so that's where the brand artist came from.
While you were talking, I kept thinking about this idea I've been playing with lately. That is this idea of, I've been calling it like a sign, signal, or symptom.
Mm,
And I actually started a like solo episode talking about this after listening to some of your content where you're talking about your dream with the crow
mm,
and seeing a crow in your dream and seeing the crow the next day. And how, for me, dreams are often this kind of signal and symptom
mm.
of what's under the surface. Maybe I'm not fully expressing emotions. And it sounds like, I love that what you're saying is kind of furthering this idea of like when you stop creating, when you stop incorporating art, it's almost like this signal or symptom that something else is out of
Yeah.
alignment.
Yeah, massively. And there's two ways that like art comes through as a signal for me. One, it comes through as a warning sign, right? Where it's like
Mhm.
if I'm feeling like I'm run down or I'm feeling really tired or I'm feeling like I'm burning out or whatever it may be, I get this like voice in my head which literally says create art, create more art, create art, create art. For so long I ignored that, right? Now I know that that's a sign. Now I know that that's like not just something to be ignored. Now, the other piece is, like you were saying, like, you know, even in the last 10 years of my life, when I think about all the way from high school to where I am now, every time art would become absent from my life, it was actually a bigger sign that the life I was living was not in alignment with the life I wanted to be living.
Mm.
You know, when the things that we value so highly disappear and we start to feel that dis-ease from that, that's not something that should be ignored. But I feel like we live in a world where we are told that suffering is necessary for success, that sacrificing joy and fulfillment is necessary for success. And that's what I did for so long until I then realized that that doesn't feel good for me. And what is the point if it doesn't feel good? And if I don't enjoy the process, then why am I putting myself through that suffering anyway?
Yeah, what is the success that you're chasing, and what is that success worth if you don't enjoy the process of getting there?
Exactly. And it's so normalized, you know, like
Mm.
if I think back, and this is something that I've only been reflecting on this deeply, like since stepping into this brand artist name, you know, I think back to 16, 17-year-old me who was at that open day for university. And it's like, why did I feel as though I had to deny that feeling that came through when I was standing in that art space to go follow the shoulds, right? Why are those shoulds there in the first place? And so if I think back to that point in time and I could give myself a piece of advice, the piece of advice would be to follow the passion, follow what feels alive, get rid of the shoulds, and just follow what feels alive for you. And that's what I'm trying, like, really embodying right now at this point in my business as well. Like, I've started to deconstruct the way that I've built business over the last 4 years, literally shatter it and begin to rebuild in a whole new way, because I realized the last 4 years was built upon those shoulds.
Hmm.
And we're taught to build upon shoulds, to follow the shoulds instead of following our passions and following what feels good. I wouldn't change the journey that I've been on, because I feel like this journey that I've been through has given me embodied wisdom that makes me so much more valuable as a coach or as a leader or even just as a human, right? But if there's someone listening to this and they're at that beginning point and they're like open to receiving this guidance, it's like, what does feel alive for you right now? What are you most passionate about right now? And are you just following the shoulds because it's what someone else has told you success is and means? Or is it because it's what you truly want?
I talk about shedding your shoulds
Mm-hmm.
so much on this podcast. You are so on brand right now. I love it. And it really is this challenge that I want to put out there. And it's not, I'm not the first one to put it out there. But what would you do if you didn't have to make money? right? Like, I love money. Let's make more money. Let's have more women be wealthy and financially dependent. But
Yeah.
also, if you didn't have that voice, right, as a high schooler, if it wasn't the voice of society telling you that can't make you money, what
Mm,
would you do? And even now, whoever's listening, it doesn't matter how old you are, what would you do if you didn't have to make money, right? If nobody was ever going to know, that's the other thing. If no one was ever going to know how you spend your day, how would you spend it?
Another way to ask that question, which really landed for me, is if you knew you would not fail, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like that answer is I would be an artist. I would create art. I would paint. I would be in the garden all day, you know? And that's why I've really started to step into this because I'm like, okay, if that is what I would do without the shoulds or without this fear of failing or this fear of it not working out, then why don't I integrate that now? And obviously we live in a world where it's like if I wanted to, I could probably shut everything down and just 100% lean into that and try to make that work. But I also know that I don't just want the one thing, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
do want both. And that's for me why it's like, let's integrate both now and then see how that continues to evolve over time as I step deeper and deeper and deeper into doing that thing that I had been preventing myself from doing.
I'm going to take this even further and kind of in another direction because I want to get into the idea of creating a magnetic brand and really
Yeah.
finding yourself authentically as a human to kind of infuse your brand, but also sometimes that means that part of who you are isn't in your brand, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be an exact mirror of you. And how you have these conversations with your clients, how you help them navigate finding, okay, this is who I am. What parts do I put into my business? What parts can I keep out of it?
Yeah.
And how to make that into this magnetic brand that really has an impact and creates that connection with their audience.
I think the fun thing about personal brands is there's really no boundaries around what you can or can't integrate. There's only what you do and don't want to integrate, right? Like there's parts of myself that I don't drive forward like my brand with, but then there's other parts of myself that I'm like, yes, this feels like so alive. This is what I want to bring through and really share loudly in my brand. Simple examples of this, right? Art is the forefront of my brand now. One thing I don't really show in my brand is my relationship. No right or
Mm.
wrong around that. I'll mention it here and there, but it's just not something that I'm like, is the center of my personal brand. So I always ask my clients, like, do a brainstorm. And there's a couple things you can brainstorm on this. First of all, getting clear on what it is that you value, getting clear on what you enjoy doing, what are your passions, what are some experiences that you've had in life or that you're now experiencing in life, what's the journey that you've been through, what do you enjoy doing, like really just doing a lot of self-reflection to get clear on who you actually are. Because a lot of people step into wanting to build a personal brand, but they actually have no clue who they are. They have no clue what separates them from everyone else out there. And your personal brand is literally built upon you and what makes you you. So whether that's, your passion for being a mother, whether that's, you're extremely passionate about running, whatever that may be, what are your uniquities that really separate you from everyone else? And how can you start to bring that through when you're building that personal brand for yourself? But on that note of magnetism that you mentioned, there's one thing that I truly, truly, truly believe creates that quote unquote magnetism. And everyone's searching for it. Everyone's like, how can I be magnetic? How can I integrate this into my brand? How can I start attracting people with ease? And they're always looking outside of themselves to
Mm-hmm.
find that thing. And I can speak from experience that for the last 4 years, I was looking outside of myself to find that thing. But it's actually within you already. And it comes down to just being a full embodiment of who it is that you truly are at your core. And not just talking about the thing, but showing people how
Mm-hmm.
deeply you embody what it is that you say that you do. Example of this, I used to always just say, I'm a creative person. I create art. I've got a creative mind. But then I never showed that side of me to anyone else. I never showed my art. I didn't create space to actually practice art and to create art. And so I was saying what I am and I was saying what I do without fully embodying it. And unless someone can actually see for themselves that you are deeply in alignment with that thing that you say you do, they're not going to believe it. And so that's where the disconnect is. When you are not a full embodiment of your brand, of who it is that you truly are at your core, the magnetism is not there.
I feel like that goes full circle back to how I started this, saying that you're one of the few people where I've actually seen it. Like, I follow your content and I see the creative side with the brand strategy. And it's like, if
Mm.
this is what I want to be known for as the brand artist, I need to show branding and building and strategy. And I need to actually show and embody the artist side. And so I love that you're bringing this home for us in this way, because I see that through the way that you do show up online, the way that you have built your business.
I appreciate that. And it's so interesting to observe too. Like, it's only really been the last 2 months, I'd say, that I've fully stepped into this brand artist identity. And ever since fully leaning in, I've received so much of that feedback of women like literally saying how inspired they are, how they fully see me and they see that I'm deeply embodied in what I'm saying. And when you actually make that shift and you actually step into that, you will know that people see it because they will start to reflect it to you, whether it be sitting on this podcast and you giving me that feedback, or whether it be someone on social media commenting on a post or sending me a DM. Like, when you are truly embodying what you say that you want to do, you will receive the feedback. And I always think back to, like, when have I been so magnetized to another woman or to someone else who's, killing it at what they do? And it's when I can truly see that they're a deep embodiment of what it is they
Mm.
preach. And I feel like we're in this day and age where it's so easy to create false facades online. You can literally download apps that quite literally change your face and body structure. So it's so easy to create false facades. It's so easy to go and pay and do a brand shoot, and play dress up for the day, to look the part, to go hire someone else's house and get some photos in it. For all anyone else knows, that's your place, right? So it's so easy to create these false facades, and to fall victim to that, as someone who thinks that they need to create a false facade in order to create success. The success actually comes when you stop playing dress up, when you stop putting up those facades and you just start walking the talk. You start creating the results for yourself first. You start embodying what it is that you teach first. And then that is when everything begins to shift.
Amazing. I love it because I'm seeing it
Mm.
from how you have built your business, and even just in this conversation of not showing up and being like, yep, got it all figured out. It was perfectly figured out. You're like, no, this has been a journey. And two
Yeah.
months ago, I've started to embody this in a brand new way.
Mm.
And that is exactly what makes you drawn to somebody and creates that connection of like, you're sharing it as you go. And what I really love about this, and I think what my big takeaway is going to be, is that it just lends to loving your business when
Mm.
you are building a business that you actually want to have that lifestyle of,
Mm.
right? So many of us, it's like, okay, a lifestyle business. Let me make sure I have the perfect matcha that I make every morning, even though I don't like matcha, but that's what the Instagram girlies do. And it's
Yeah.
like, instead of doing that, how do you actually want to show up in your life? What does a life that you're obsessed with actually look like?
Mm.
And then how do you share your journey to become that person that
Yeah.
is authentic to you, that you already are, but the journey to go even deeper? And then, like you are right now, sharing that along the way. And I know you do that on your podcast as well, of like sharing the real journey instead of
Mm.
just this finish line.
That's it. Since you mentioned the podcast, like, something that I'm really grateful for with my podcast is I started that before I started my business. And so whenever anyone talks about wanting to understand the journey, like, go and listen to that, because the very first episode, like, I'm 22 years old, don't even have a business yet. I'm still in my architecture degree. I'm thinking about quitting. I don't know what to do. Versus you can then see every single stage in the journey that's come from there and what that evolution has actually looked like. So it is a journey, it is business is a journey, life is a journey. And I've started to just view business and view creating success just as a lifelong journey of becoming, my fullest self. And so every decision that I'm making from this point forward is being in true alignment with what it is that I actually want for myself, really questioning, why I'm following something. Is it because I am trying to prove myself? Is it coming from a wounded place? Or is it coming from a place of just like that true soul desire? But it's been a journey to like get here to be able to start to question and see those two perspectives and start to make decisions from those two perspectives as well. Because when I first started my journey, it was from a completely different place. It was from a place of I need to prove myself. I need to create this quote unquote success that, I've been told is the version of success. And yeah, just it's been a process of like shedding those shoulds and shedding those paradigms that have been pushing me out of alignment and slowly coming further and further and further in back into alignment with my true self.
That is a perfect way to kind of lead us into my last series of questions. And I want to know what you're obsessed with. And first, specifically, when it does come to what resources are filling your cup that are helping you learn and come back into alignment with yourself, people you listen to, podcasts, music, anything. What are you currently obsessed with?
I'd say like the current resources for me is just my network, and
Mhm.
actually leaning into connecting more deeply with people who are truly embodying what I want to be stepping into. Like I had a really deep conversation with a girlfriend the other day who she's so embodied in her feminine energy and her feminine leadership, and there was so much value that came from that, and so many resources that came from that as well, such as like podcasts she referred to me, and a website that has like that you can just like find any books on, and all of that. So for me it's my network I'm obsessed with at the moment, in terms of connecting with those people around me that are fully embodied in what it is that they do and learning from that.
That's beautiful. The next one, I have been lately asking people, what are you obsessed with when it comes to play and exploration? And
Uh,
maybe for you, even this is how you're showing up as an artist or what you're creating lately. But in that whole realm of play and creation, what are you obsessed with?
Yeah, it's definitely my art right now, and I'm integrating that into my day in different ways. On the days where I have more space or at nighttime, I have my painting easel set up in one room so I can just jump in there and just start creating and start painting and get into that flow really quickly without any resistance. And then on the days where I'm like, I feel like I'm more busy or I don't have the full mental capacity to be painting, it's just pulling out a little sketchbook and doing like a little quick doodle, something to just like keep that creative muscle in practice and to remind myself that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I don't need to sit in the room for 3 hours painting in order to meet that need. I can simply do some doodles in a notebook, and have that need met. So for me it is just creating. I have like whenever it comes to like painting or drawing, like you can even see on the whiteboard behind me, like that literally yesterday I had just this idea come through. I started scribbling it because I'm like, oh, I want to come back and I want to turn that into a proper piece of art, and I've had calls with people where I'm doing like some self-development work, and then there's like some kind of visual that comes through that could be like a representation of that piece of growth that I'm going through, and I scribble that down so that I can paint that. So that's like my play at the moment.
I love that. And I'm always so interested to hear the way that different artists get their kind of inspiration
Mm.
because for me the ability to take something in my brain and put it on paper has not been developed yet, but I'll put just like pen to paper, hate pencils, love marker because it's permanent, and
Yeah.
just it turns into something random. I never know where it's going, I never know what it's going to be until
Yeah.
it's done. And I think it's so, I mean, I think it's so special, and maybe one day I'll be at that point too, where it's like I can see something or a start of something and really put it on paper.
I think like there's, both sides are so powerful, right? Like, to be able to just pick up a pen, start scribbling, and trust the process of what unfolds there. I love to practice that kind of creating because it's completely surrendering. It's letting go of control. It's just allowing yourself to fully be in flow. So I think that's so powerful that that's what you focus on. And then, yeah, when it comes to like being able to, I guess, see a vision and then bring it to life, could have something to do with, I guess, the way that your mind works, for one. Like I know that when it comes to meditation, not everyone has visual experiences, but sometimes they have different experiences. So, on one level, it's like be okay with not needing to have to create in that way. But then also, if you want to work on it, be explorative with that, like sit down, shut your eyes, create a moment of stillness for yourself and ask yourself, what do I see right now that I could potentially bring to life, and trust what comes through. And then again, like release the control of needing it to turn out a certain way and just allow that to flow through.
I feel like I get little nuggets of wisdom. I especially love having other coaches on the podcast too, because I always get little coaching. I just pulled my headphones out of my mic. We're back. That being said, how can somebody who's listening work with you, connect with you?
Yeah, I'm so easy to find. Instagram is where I'm the most active. I'm just at Empower with M on Instagram. And you can also listen to my podcast, which is the Empower with M podcast. If you are curious about working with me, then the best way to approach that is to just send me a DM on Instagram. Be direct with me. Literally let me know, hey, Em, I heard you on this podcast and I'm really curious about what it could look like to work together. And then we can have a chat about what potential might exist there.
Thank you so much. I always love talking to other people who are in the brand and marketing side of things. And I said this 3 times already, but I love that you have that creative and artistic side where you can merge these together. If you are still listening, let us know. Send Emily or me a DM, send me a voice note. That is my favorite way to communicate at Becoming Obsessed Pod on Instagram. And if this episode did something, itch that little spot in your brain, send it to a friend or post it on your story to help other people build a life that they truly love. All right, guys, let's go get obsessed.